Welcome back to Outside View Scandals. Today we're diving into one of the most chilling and controversial episodes of American history, the scandal surrounding Martin Luther King Jr. and the FBI. It's a story that combines heroism, paranoia, and downright dirty tactics, an explosive mix, even by historical standards. Because, as we will see, when the fight for civil rights clashed with the machinery of state surveillance, the results were as scandalous as they were disturbing. To understand the scandal, we first need to set the stage. The 1950s and 1960s were a turbulent time in the United States. The civil rights movement was gaining momentum, challenging decades of systemic racism and segregation. At the forefront of this movement was Martin Luther King Jr., a Baptist minister turned activist who became the voice of a generation. Through his speeches and nonviolent protests, King inspired millions and forced America to confront its deep-seated injustices. But not everyone was cheering him on. Enter J. Edgar Hoover, the longtime director of the FBI. Hoover was a man obsessed with control, secrecy, and rooting out what he saw as threats to the American way of life. And in his eyes, Martin Luther King Jr. was a threat. Why? Because King was challenging the status quo, demanding equality and rallying people across racial and economic lines. To Hoover, this kind of influence was dangerous. Under Hoover's leadership, the FBI launched a covert campaign against King that would later become one of the agency's darkest chapters. The operation was part of COINTELPRO, a counterintelligence program designed to survey, infiltrate, and disrupt groups and individuals deemed subversive. And while COINTELPRO had made many targets, King was one of its primary focuses. The FBI began its surveillance of King in the late 1950s, initially under the pretext of investigating alleged communist ties. This was the height of the Cold War, after all, and the mere suggestion of communism was enough to justify almost any action. But the FBI found no evidence that King was a communist. That didn't stop them. Instead, they shifted their focus to his personal life, seeking to discredit him in any way they could. And here's where the scandal takes a deeply disturbing turn. The FBI wiretapped King's phones, bugged his hotel rooms, and monitored his every move. They gathered information about his private life, including allegations of extramarital affairs, and used it to try to undermine his credibility. In one particularly chilling instance, the FBI sent King an anonymous letter accompanied by recordings of his private conversations. The letter suggested that King should commit suicide, threatening to expose his personal life if he didn't. Yes, you heard that right. A government agency essentially tried to blackmail one of the most influential figures in American history. The campaign against King wasn't just about his personal life. The FBI also sought to disrupt the civil rights movement itself. They planted informants within King's inner circle, spread disinformation to sow distrust among his allies, and attempted to turn public opinion against him. One particularly egregious example was their effort to portray King as a communist sympathizer to white audiences and as a morally corrupt leader to black audiences. And the goal was clear: to isolate King and weaken the movement he represented. But here's the irony. Despite the FBI's relentless efforts, their campaign had the opposite effect. King's leadership remained unshaken, and the civil rights movement continued to gain strength. His speeches, including the iconic "I Have a Dream" address, resonated across the nation, inspiring people to join the fight for equality. And while the FBI's tactics may have caused personal pain and strain for King, they couldn't silence his message. The FBI's surveillance of King didn't end with his assassination in 1968. In fact, it wasn't until the 1970s that the full extent of COINTELPRO's abuses came to light. A group of activists broke into an FBI office in Media, Pennsylvania, and uncovered documents detailing the program. These revelations sparked outrage and led to congressional investigations, including the famous Church Committee hearings. The hearings exposed how the FBI had systematically violated the rights of American citizens using surveillance and harassment to stifle dissent. And King's case became one of the most glaring examples of the agency's overreach. The scandal prompted calls for reform and led to new guidelines intended to limit the FBI's power. But the question remains, how much has really changed? Today, the story of Martin Luther King Jr. and the FBI serves as a sobering reminder of the dangers of unchecked government power. It's a cautionary tale about how easily the tools of state can be turned against the very people they are supposed to protect. And it's a testament to King's resilience and courage that he continued to fight for justice even in the face of such relentless persecution. So, what can we learn from this scandal? First, that the fight for civil rights was never just a battle against segregation and discrimination. It was also a battle against deeply entrenched systems of power that sought to maintain the status quo. Second, that the true measure of leadership isn't just about vision or charisma, but about perseverance in the face of unimaginable adversity. And finally, that history has a way of vindicating those who stand on the right side of justice, even if their path is fraught with hardship. So thanks for turning into Outside View Scandals, where we shine a light on the stories that reveal the complexities of power, justice, and human resilience. And remember, the next time someone mentions Big Brother, just remind them, he's been around a lot longer than they think. Until next time, and the next video is already right here in the end screen.